Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us on our BSM Education Plan webinar. I'm Adam Ehrmantraut. As you know, I'm the president of BSM. We have a host of panelists that'll be participating this evening. We have Dr. Steve Pohlen. He is our Director of Technology and Learning. We have Mrs. Rikki Mortl. She is our junior high principal. And we have Dr. Sue Skinner. She is our senior high principal as well. So you've got a lot of people here that can be helpful as we try to prepare for the 2020-21 school year. I'm going to share my screen here. So there's some content I'd like to share with you. The whole intent today is really build understanding in preparation for the 2020-2021 school year. But before we get into that, whenever we come together as a community, faith being an important element of that, we always begin in prayer. So I'm going to share a prayer. Please join me. You can take a moment and quiet yourselves and ready for prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Gracious God, we come to you at the beginning of this academic year with our many feelings, expectations, fears, and hopes. Help us to remember, however, we have the comforting assurance from you. I will always be with you. We ask that you bless the faculty, the students' families. We pray that you will guide us in all ways and that we will seek your will in everything that we do. We ask this in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. The content that I'm going to share today is rooted in 5 different large buckets. One, I'll share some of the behind the scenes planning work that's been going on since really last spring. We'll talk mostly about the model. I'm assuming that's where most of the questions will come. If our first webinar earlier today was any indication, that's where people have the most questions. I'll walk through a daily example of how our kids will experience a school day, note some key dates, and then open it up for questions. So mechanically, how this should work, as I'm working through this content, it'll likely be about 20-25 minutes of content. Pose questions using the question and answer feature in the Zoom platform. And Dr. Pohlen is serving as our moderator. So he will collectively build the questions around themes and we'll be able to address them at that point in time. But you can start posing questions as we're working through content. In terms of the planning this summer, as I mentioned, the work really started in the spring, but it carried on intensely in the summer. And in this dynamic environment, things shifted so dramatically over time. It really was an intense effort to be ready for a school year for all of our students, 7 through 12. Here's a list of people that participated. The educational design team and the virtual learning team were professionals, faculty members, school leaders, etc., who were looking at 2 different elements of the learning experience. The first team, the educational design team, was looking at the different models and what they potentially could look like for our students and families. The virtual learning team was looking at specifically best practices around virtual instruction, knowing that in some ways will have to play a role in our educational experience for our students this year. Obviously, parents and student feedback was important throughout the course of the summer. School leadership had been working nonstop on this really since March of last year. Our board of directors was intricately involved in trying to determine the best paths forward. And we worked with medical advisors as well to help us break down some complicated medical approaches, et cetera. So in looking at building a model like this, there were some guiding principles that were really important to us as an organization, as a school. And the first one was a commitment to risk mitigation. The idea that in order for us to have a school where our students and our faculty can deliver the best product, we had to really commit to risk mitigation. The second piece, we recognize how important a faith community is to our students, to our families, and that Catholic education is critical and probably even more important in the circumstances that we're in now, frankly. One of the principles that we did not want to let go of was this idea of a holistic education. Education is not just about the academic endeavors. There's the spiritual component, the social, the emotional, and we want that holistic experience embedded within our education for all of our students. Developmental appropriateness was also a key consideration when we determined what we could and couldn't do as we were building the model. And then, as you all know, being able to be flexible and agile throughout the course of this year is going to be a critical skill. It's going to be a critical mindset, and it is from the outset for us. So with those guiding principles in mind, there's some objectives on the educational side that we want to achieve. One, I had mentioned risk mitigation. We wanted to implement those risk mitigation strategies in the school. We also want on-campus substantive live instruction with adult support. That was a critical element of the design. Social and emotional development with peer-to-peer, critical. And we knew if we were going to be able to pull all of these things off, we would have to leverage technology to support the classroom experience. I'm going to just spend a little time on the risk mitigation strategies that we've been able to implement and will be implementing throughout the course of the year. Personal health screening, as you saw in the plan, is an important part of every individual's approach to Benilde-St. Margaret's at the beginning of the day. Whether you're an adult or whether you're a student, going through the personal health screening questions makes a really significant difference in trying to mitigate risk on campus. Obviously, masks will be in play. Temperature screening on the entrance into school. We have thermal imaging, high-speed thermal imaging technology that is being installed that will allow us to scan any individual that walks into the school on the front end of the school day. We've made some upgrades to our HVAC system. We've built a physical plant that incorporates physical distancing, really in the places where people will be together for greater than 15 minutes within 6 feet radiuses. So classrooms, common learning spaces, lunches. Cleaning, hand sanitizer, contact tracing methodology, and then there will be quarantine, depending on how things play out, there'll be quarantines, there could be shifts to virtual. The agility piece is important to think about in terms of mitigation. In terms of the actual model, there are different approaches depending on the grade levels. Obviously, we're a 7 through 12 school. We're looking at grades 7 through 9 with looking at 3 different options. Our 7th through 9th graders are the students that need the most support in terms of building academic habits. They need the most support in terms of social interaction, adolescent development. They need the most adult to student connection. So in those 3 options, we have the on-campus daily, and that's classroom instruction based on size limits. So each class is set up in a way that has our students distanced 6 feet apart, and then students that are not in that specific classroom setting would be in a common learning space in the school, live streaming into that classroom or working on the content in a different way, an asynchronous way. So a way that they can just engage the content without potentially engaging a teacher at that point in time. And then the common spaces that we'll be using are the Moore Library, the Atrium, the Hamburg Theater. Those are spaces that can accommodate students at 6-foot distances. They'll also be supported by adults when our students are in those spaces, either live streaming into a class or working on something for that class in an asynchronous model. The schedule that we're working with this year is a quarter block schedule. This is different than anything that we've done. I'll talk more about that a little bit later, but a quarter block is 4 classes per quarter, extended classes, so intense instruction, intense investigation into that curriculum over that time frame. The other option for grades 7 through 9 is a hybrid option. Here we would have 2 cohorts essentially, and this is where students have an option to be on campus every other day, and the same concepts apply in that circumstance. And we also have a 100% virtual learning option, and that's built upon a live stream into the classroom setting on a daily basis. The platform that we're going to be using as a school is the Zoom platform, which allows us to marry off-campus or off-site learning with in the classroom learning. We've been experimenting that a great deal over the course of the summer. So what you can see here with 7 through 9, there's different approaches here. I will say in communicating with families, families are in very, very different places in terms of their comfort levels. So there are options for 7 through 9. Grades 10 through 12 have 2 different options based, and you can see them here. One is a hybrid model that has 2 cohorts and on campus every other day. And when students are off-site, they'll be live streaming into those classrooms or involved in asynchronous work. Again, block schedule, same schedule. They also have the live streaming model. We work to try to get all of our 10 through 12th graders on campus as well in common learning spaces. We do not have the capacity to pull that type of educational support off. These are our students who we believe can operate best in this model. We completely recognize this is not the ideal scenario in comparison to years past, but we're very confident that this will be a successful educational model for our 10 through 12th graders. I mentioned before the block schedule, the quarter block schedule, and here are some of the key mechanics of that. One, the class periods are 75 minutes of instruction, so students will have 4 courses per quarter. And the idea here is a real intensive investigation into the content during those time periods. It's a real intentional effort to build relationships with those students over the course of a quarter, which allows 2 things to happen. One, you have some instructional agility as things potentially could change. It becomes easier for a teacher to engage with 60 to 75 students versus 150 students. The other piece that it offers is the limited contacts on a daily basis between students and faculty members. I've mentioned a few different times the importance of social and emotional development and interaction with peers. That's a key element of any educational pursuit, particularly adolescent education. So we are certainly committed to continuing with our campus ministry efforts. Our student support groups will be in play. Our guidance and college counselors will be connecting with our students as well. We'll continue our student mentoring programs to make sure our students have the ability to grow in their own social and emotional development. A common question that has come up is related to athletics and activities. And at BSM, that is a pillar of the experience. There's no question about it. The way in which we're looking at this, we absolutely want to incorporate these experiences for our students, but we have to do so with risk mitigation and safety protocols in place. The Minnesota State High School League has really been doing some good work along with the Minnesota Department of Health and outlining what these risk mitigation procedures and protocols look like, and sharing those with schools so that they can move forward and offer these activities and these athletic events throughout the course of the year. As you know, for the fall season, at this point, football and volleyball on the athletic side have been postponed to the spring. We anticipate that type of decision-making occurring for the winter season and also for the spring season, depending on the dynamic nature of our environment around us. So shifting then and looking at a quick example, daily example for our students. What does this really look like when they walk into the building? On the transportation side, our students who are riding the bus will have limited capacity on the buses. There'll be masks on buses. And as students come into school, there'll be a different look to the process. We'll be spacing students. They'll be working through the main entry. They'll be masking as they work through the main entry and accessing thermal scanning for elevated temps. Those with elevated temps will have another scan several minutes later off to the side of the entry. And those that have an elevated temperature will be sent home, and those that don't obviously will matriculate into their day. They'll move directly to the classroom experience upon entry. And here, again, we're really working with our students to try to build protocols, safety protocols with them and train them very, very well. Physical distancing into the classroom, masks in the classroom. We'll have specific set limits of students in the classroom based on this distancing. And there'll be a rotation among 7 through 9 students based on the class size. So students will be in the classroom with their teachers X number of days, and depending on the class size, they may be live streaming into that class from a common learning space. If in fact, say the class is 20 and it fits 14 students with distancing in play, those other 6 students would be working from a common learning space supported by other adults in the building. And that rotation would be class specific based on class size. I mentioned earlier, Zoom would be the platform to make that go. So after the first period or after any period, passing time would ensue. And this year it is a backpack only environment. We will not be utilizing lockers and we'll be moving directly from class to class. The idea of congregation in the hallways, et cetera, we are moving away from that and moving toward movement into the classroom. The lunch scenario, we've added many lunches to our schedule. They'll be limited in size. There'll be multiple locations, including outdoor locations for our students. And there'll be several different distribution points where our students can pick up their food. The types of food and the access will be different than years past. We'll be using physical distancing in the lunch setting as well. Masks will be removed, obviously, while eating. After school will look different too. After school, many of our students participate in athletics and activities, and some of our students also stay for academic support. As we move forward, we're looking at athletics and activities still carrying forth, but students can be on campus for academic support beyond activities and athletics, and that is it. So we're really trying to control the predictability of our environment with our students throughout the course of the day. A natural question will come up, well, what happens when COVID-19 is in a school? And there are 4 different big pieces that are important to consider. One is communication. How does communication play out? And here again, we've worked closely with the Minnesota Department of Health on recommended strategies, et cetera. If we have a confirmed case of COVID-19 amongst our faculty or amongst our student body, we will communicate with the entire school that we do have a case. Obviously, we will not be naming the individual who has tested positive. Contact tracing occurs with that positive individual, and essentially there is a connection made between that individual and everyone that individual has come in contact with within a 6-foot radius for 15 minutes or more. That's really a key concept to consider, key concept to think about. Those individuals will receive a different communication, and that will indicate that they have been connected to somebody who has tested positive, and they have been within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more, and that will trigger a 14-day quarantine, obviously a connection with the primary healthcare provider as well. What happens as well behind the scenes is the Minnesota Department of Health connects with each school and makes a recommendation based on the positive identification. And in conversation so far with the Minnesota Department of Health, they're looking at circumstances individually and differently. So there isn't a blanket recommendation for each school, but there are 2 significant considerations that come to the forefront when they're making recommendations to schools. One is, what does the larger community situation look like in terms of transmission? And then, is transmission occurring in your school? Is there direct line of transmission in your school? Those 2 pieces are really important as they make recommendations to schools that find themselves in this position. So shifting to some important dates right now. Transfer deadline. Generally speaking, people commit to a school in the spring and they move forward from there. Obviously, this is a completely different set of circumstances, and there's a different transfer deadline for our families right now. Some families are looking for something different. Some are trying to get into this to this educational model from other schools. So we're in this really unique position. So families, the transfer deadline is August 12th. Please notify either Mrs. Mortl or Dr. Skinner in the senior high if you're planning to transfer. Those that are continuing in this model will have all new student technology training. You can see there's 2 options there. Education model selection. This is a part of the roundup process, the online roundup process. This is really important for our planning purposes. And then you can see how that first week of on-campus instruction looks. You can see when grades 7 through 9 are on campus, and you can see when the cohorts, 10 through 12 cohorts, are on campus as well to start during that first shortened week. I'm going to pause right there. I know the Q&A is filling up with questions, and Dr. Pohlen is looking at some of those questions. This is a great time. I'll turn it over to Dr. Pohlen. We'll be ready to assist with any answers we can provide.
Hello. So we will try to get through as many of these as we can, but just know that whatever questions we do not get through, we will make sure that we're developing and publishing an FAQ within the coming days for those that we don't get to. So Dr. Ehrmantraut, there's some questions regarding the choice of model, so 7 through 9 and 10 through 12, related to Hennepin County metrics and governor's guidelines and things like that. So just clarify how BSM made its decision to do the model we did, and also about, can we switch modes, or under what circumstances might we switch modes, and at what points are there certain points in the year where that would take place, or can it happen at any time?
Yep, great question. The two driving factors when you look at the model piece, one, we wanted to make sure we implemented all of our risk mitigation strategies. That was not negotiable for us. We knew we wanted to implement those pieces as well as we could, while also creating an on-campus experience for our students. So that was a critical piece. When looking at the tiered data in relation to the governor's and the Minnesota Department of Health's recommendations, independent schools are in a unique position, being that they draw students from such a wide geographic area. It changes the dynamic a little bit. In our instance, we look at Hennepin County, that's where we're located. We look at that type of guidance, and the governor's 14-day, the way in which the Minnesota Department of Health is making recommendations to schools is based on a 14-day COVID transmission rate per 10,000 individuals, and then they make recommendations there. And what we're looking at is trying to be within reason, frankly, related to those recommendations. Right now, we fall in line with Hennepin County. When you look at the capacity of our school, students, and the actual facility, we're within that capacity, which is good, but that has happened because we have insisted on making sure that we implement the mitigation strategies, but also we're using, every square foot of this building to try to get our students on campus as much as possible. And the second part of that question was in relation to transitions between models. Yes, I do anticipate that being a real possibility this year.
Or impacted based on the COVID-19 situation. So band, choir, physical education, what are some of the strategies we're employing there?
Sure, thanks, Dr. Pohlen. We are being creative with everything, as we need to be right now. So we know that choir is a class that is actually going to look a lot different this year. For example, we are not anticipating our students doing any singing, but we have ordered drumming sets. So some of our choir kids are going to be doing some learning different drumming classes, some music appreciation, still studying music, because we do think that there is value in the band and the art. Our band instruments have little covers on them that will help with the spraying of the droplets that can come out from speaking or from the instruments. PE is going to be different, and it's going to be reimagined as well. PE classes are going to be outside. We have snowshoes. We have all sorts of different things that we have available for our students. But we have reimagined a lot of the classes, and they are going to look a lot different than they did last spring and last winter.
Dr. Skinner, there's some questions about the schedule. When are schedules coming out? Is there a BSM hour every quarter? What about finals? Will those be taking place as per normal? Some of those kind of scheduling questions.
Sure, great questions. So in the high school, students have 8 class periods, and one of those class periods is a BSM hour. So if you think about the quarter system, the first quarter will be periods 1, 3, 5, 7. The second quarter will be periods 2, 4, 6, 8. And the counselors right now, the high school counselors, are working on balancing those schedules in terms of the level of rigor. So that when you have 4 classes without your BSM hour, you can expect that that is balanced in terms of just the intensity and the amount of homeworks and projects and writing and reading and that sort of thing. And then when you have your other semester, you've got that BSM hour, which is where you take care of the business that you need to take care of when it comes to guidance and college counseling, when it comes to any of the extracurricular type clubs or that sort of thing. So you're filling up that space in a way that's different than what you may have done that previous quarter. And once you see your schedule, that'll make a little bit more sense. So the counselors right now are working on that balance, right? Because you want to make sure that your quarters, the 2 quarters, are balanced out in terms of how you can manage your time. You'll see those schedules hopefully by the end of this week. And then if you see something that just doesn't look right, we want you to email your counselor right away. But the courses you selected last spring will be in your schedule. What might be different from last spring is how those are scheduled into your day, if that makes sense.
Mrs. Mortl, there are some questions about attendance, and if a student is staying home because they're quarantined or not feeling well, but they're still participating in the live stream, you know, what constitutes being present and what constitutes being absent for a given student on a given day?
Sure. Well, gone are the days that we would recommend kids coming to school if they have the sniffles or if they're just not feeling well. I think we all have been guilty of going to work or school when we're just not quite feeling 100%, but it's easier to attend school or work than it is to stay at home. So we are going to be having policies in place where we're asking families, we really want to partner with you. If your child says he or she has a headache or isn't feeling well, please keep them home. Of course, we have our present students. That means that they are physically in front of us in the building. We're going to have another group of students that will be virtual, but they will still be considered present. They're just going to be virtually present. And then we're going to have our absent students, which means that they are absent. They are absent from school and they are absent virtually. Or you could have an absent virtual student. So they're absent from school when they've elected to be at school because they're not feeling well, they're quarantining, whatever it happens to be, but they are present live streaming. So there's going to be a few extra codes in PowerSchool that you'll see. If you go into your child's attendance, you'll see different codes during the school year. But we will take into consideration kids can be present even though they're not physically present in our building with us this year.
Dr. Skinner, can you add to the questions about before and after school? What is that going to look like? The carpool lanes, are there places for kids to be while they're waiting for rides to come? What are the before and after school protocols going to be?
Sure. Well, I can tell you it's going to look different because I think we've enjoyed a long history here at BSM where before school and after school, it's fun, right? You know, kids are hanging out in the cafeteria, grabbing some breakfast, you know, after school out in the front plaza area, gathered in groups, sitting down, laying in the grass, just waiting for their ride. So it'll be more structured. So students, we'll set a time like you can't come on campus before this time. And that gives us a chance to make sure we're ready to help students enter the building safely and find their place to be. And then after school, the idea is that there's going to be students that do stay after school, especially if they have an activity or they need to get help from a teacher, but that would look different than it has in the past. It'd be more structured and more intentional. I did see one question, what if my sibling has an activity, can I stay and wait? I think that's where we'd want to communicate and figure out who is that and where would we have them sit? You know, a space in the library, they need to be 6 feet apart, but it won't be like it's been in the past where it's, you know, sort of go wherever you want to go. Unfortunately, for now anyway, that's not going to happen.
And Dr. Skinner and Dr. Pohlen, can I just jump in? If your child is virtually present for the day, they can still attend activities. So if he or she is in a sport or activity after school, they are most welcome to come on campus for their sport or activity. I just wanted to get that in. I neglected to say that earlier.
Okay, Mrs. Mortl, explain the rotation of students in and out of our common spaces and into the classroom. Do the teachers rotate from class to class? Is it the students that are rotating? Who determines that? Is it done day by day, or how does that go?
Great questions. So we're going to have different classes. One of the elementary, more of the K-8 style that I've been seeing a lot of is the kids are going to be contained in a classroom. And that would be great if we had all our kids taking the same level class all the time, but we don't have that. We have 7th graders taking high school classes. We have 8th graders taking high school classes. There's all sorts of different classes that we offer our students, which is a keystone to BSM. So what we are going to be doing is we are still going to have all of the different class offerings. We haven't changed those. We are going to have the classrooms. The teachers are going to be teaching in the classrooms. And then say a class can fit 16 students, but there's 20 kids on the roster for that particular day. We would have 4 of those students go to a virtual learning space within our building that will be supervised by a teacher, whether it's a teacher that's on prefecting duty. Dr. Pohlen is going to take a space. We're all kind of stepping into different areas to make sure that our students are supported throughout the day. We are going to try our best to, once we know which students are coming 100% virtually, which students are coming 100% in person, and the hybrid model, we're going to be able to arrange student schedules and maybe make some changes to those to best fit classrooms. An example is our band room is only used a couple periods a day, and it's a larger classroom. So we can actually have other classes in the band room when there's not band classes going on, so that we can have more students in there. So it's really a ginormous puzzle that we're trying to piece together and who can fit where. So I think that answered the question. So we're going to have students in the classroom, then we're going to have students attending attending in our virtual learning spaces on campus, and then we'll also have the virtual learning happening from students at home. Did that answer the question well enough, Dr. Pohlen?
Yes, I think so.
Thank you.
The next question, Dr. Skinner, is about masks. Who is providing the masks? Do students have to wear different ones each day? What are the protocols for making sure that students adhere to mask policies as well as social distancing policies? How are those things being handled?
Okay, so let's start with masks. So masks are not optional, and it's going to be an adjustment. I mean, our students are not used to wearing masks, and the idea would be that if they have a mask that they like to wear, that they choose, and there'll be some, I'm assuming some, you know, guidelines in terms of what the mask looks like and how it fits and how you wear it and that sort of thing. But we need to educate our students on why the masks are so important. You would be surprised at how much just educating students can make a difference in their behavior. The other part of the mask wearing puzzle, if you will, is the partnership between parents and the school. So parents, you will be surprised to learn they do listen to you. They care about what you think. And if you've been to any of our Just for Parents sessions over the years, you'll know that that really is true. They care about what you think. They listen to you. They might give you some grief about it, but you're supporting us with the mask wearing pieces is a significant part of that partnership. So if a student comes on campus, they need to be in their mask. If they can't comply or they're not willing to comply, that's problematic. They can't be here if they're not willing to comply with the mask wearing. They can have it off at lunch. And then we do have masks here at school if they forget, okay? And actually the state is providing us with, I think, 3 masks per student or something like that. We already have masks here. So if they forget their mask, we'll give them one for the day. And then the other part of the question was, Steve, what was it, drop off, pick up?
I think I also asked about social distancing.
Oh yeah, thank you. So this is where my head made the connection. So when you think about social distancing, the classrooms are set up so the desks are 6 feet apart. So when your student comes into the classroom, they're seated, they're in a seating chart so we can contact trace, and the teacher is going to make sure that they stay 6 feet apart. When they pass through the hallway, They're not going to always be 6 feet apart, but they're going to be passing quickly. They're going to keep moving. And the idea is that we don't want them congregating or lingering because we want them to keep moving so they don't stay next to somebody within 6 feet for longer than 15 minutes. Now, passing time is 5 minutes. So that's going to go quick. When it comes to coming on campus in the morning and dismissal, they're not always going to be 6 feet apart. They're just not. But they're going to be masked up. They're going to keep moving. Again, there's no loitering or congregating or just hanging out in groups. They can still be together, but they have to be spread out.
Dr. Ehrmantraut, you indicated that that each family is going to make a choice about how they start the year, whether it's virtual or hybrid or on campus. How are families allowed to make the change after the year starts, and is there a procedure for that?
Yes, the move to virtual is an easy one. It doesn't require reconfiguration to the same degree as virtual back into the classroom. We're going to need 2 weeks to make sure that we have all of our protocols and rotations in play. So if a family were to start in a virtual environment and they wanted to move to a hybrid environment or an everyday environment, we need 2 weeks to pull that off. And same goes with the hybrid to the 7 through 9. If you start in a hybrid and you're looking at an everyday on campus, again, we need 2 weeks on that.
Okay, Dr. Skinner, could you shed some light? So I have a question here about understanding the schedule, 4 classes per semester. So for example, they could take math only 1 semester and then English only math semester 1, then only English semester 2. Just kind of maybe highlight what a typical schedule might look like.
Sure. So in the high school, again, there's 7 academic courses plus your BSM hour layered in there to make it the 8th course. So let's say you've got math period 1 in the high school, and it's algebra 2. Typically, if we were pre-pandemic, if you will, you would take algebra 2 for the entire year, not every day because we have those rotating blocks. So we're condensing it into a quarter's worth of time on the calendar, but the number of meeting times and the length of those meetings is longer. So you would take math first quarter because it's an odd period. And let's say you have science second period, then the even periods meet second quarter. So by the time we get to January, you will have gone through all of your periods, all 8 of your periods, and you've earned a semester credit for each class. I think once you see your schedule, parents, once you see your students' schedule, that'll make more sense. But you're doing the same curriculum in the sense of the learning targets and the scope and the sequence for the class. It's a different pace. And at the end of the day, you're still earning the same amount of credits.
Mrs. Mortl, can you paint a picture of the lunch situation? There was some mention about prepackaged sandwiches and salads. Are there going to be hot meals? What spaces are we using for lunches? Give us a vision of that.
Sure. So we are going to have different options. We still will have the beloved meals. However, our choice selections are going to be a little different. Our vending machines will be gone. There will be no touch vending machines at all on campus anymore. There will be prepackaged meals, but they will still be hot meals as Taher has always done. So the fried chicken, that's the big meal. I heard all about it last year. They will still have that. It will just be prepackaged in a box right before the students come. We've broken our lunch times up to offer 6 or 7 different lunch periods. We are going to be using the Great Hall and the Haben as lunch areas. So I can speak to the junior high specifically. We're having 7th grade go to lunch first, but there will be lunch served from the Haben and there's lunch served from the Commons cafeteria. And then we're gonna have students that get their lunch from the Commons cafeteria go into the Great Hall, sit physically distanced at least 6 feet apart. And then we'll also have students that can go to the Haben, get their lunch and then sit in the Haben. While the weather is nice, or if we have some really hardy Minnesotans, they are always welcome to sit outside and have lunch out there. Again, masks can be off at that time while they're eating, and still encouraging that physically distant 6 feet. Am I forgetting anything about lunch? I think that covers the gist of our lunch.
I think that's good. Yep. Dr. Skinner, where do students go for free period? Can they come late? Can they leave early? What are our procedures for that?
Sure. So in the high school, there's this BSM hour, which is flex time. And again, that's used for college and guidance and college counseling. You might want to make up a test, get extra help, that sort of thing. So if you have your BSM hour at the beginning of the day or the end of the day, as long as your parents know that this is what you're doing, and we actually encourage this, you can come late or you can leave early. Those middle periods, let's say you have fifth hour as your BSM period, that's a pretty good chunk of time because you have lunch built in there. So the question is, can you leave campus to go off campus for lunch? And for so long, we have prided ourselves on being a closed campus, and we are never going to be an open campus. It just feels like we're putting our kids out there. But we're willing to discuss that with parents. We would do that in communication with parents, though. It's not a free-for-all. We need to know where the students are going, if they're leaving and coming back. Do parents know that? And we can work that out. But to come late and leave early, if your BSM hour is on either end, that can work. And then again, those middle hours, we'd have to make sure we have the good communication on how that would work.
Dr. Ehrmantraut, can you expand upon the cleaning protocols throughout the day with the facilities being used by lots of different people? What are some of those cleaning protocols that are important to highlight?
In the past, we had cleaning protocols that were essentially beginning of day, end of day types of rotations with specific types of cleaners. Now we have a whole range of tools that we're using that I can't intelligently speak to that are designed to sanitize versus just clean. And there's a specific schedule built around high volume spaces. That schedule is built around high volume spaces in a way that it hasn't been in the past. And then we've also transitioned into touchless fixtures wherever we can. Our restrooms are transitioning right now to touchless fixtures. I believe our water stations are all bottle fillers now. So we're trying to go down that path too, to eliminate some of those elements associated with high contact areas. But there are places that are also high touch, and those are also embedded in the specific schedule that our building services team has built.
Mrs. Mortl, can you speak to the no lockers policy and carrying backpacks from place to place, and where do the coats and phones and all that go?
Sure. So we are going to, as I think Dr. Ehrmantraut said earlier, switch to just backpacks. With that is going to be, obviously kids are going to have to carry different supplies. With the quarter block schedule, a student might not have art first quarter, so they would not need to carry their art supplies with them for the entire first quarter. So they would only need to bring the supplies that they need for each individual class that they have that day. I remember going to school and I had a locker, but we also had backpacks, and I would carry my big heavy math books and all the other books in my backpack. But we actually have, many of our classes have our online curriculum, or the curriculum is accessible online. So students aren't going to have to be carrying around the heavy textbooks. They can access that information online. They can leave a textbook at home, or they can leave the textbook in class and then still be able to access it. Coats, we kind of laugh about that one here at BSM because on a normal, any pre-COVID winter, students don't wear coats a lot of the times. They either, if they bring them to school, they leave them in their locker, they don't take them home, or they don't even come with them. But if a student does want to wear a jacket, they would just carry it with them or put it in their backpack for the course of the day. And then the same with lunches. If a student decides to bring a lunch from home, they are definitely welcome to put their lunch in their backpack for the day.
Okay, Dr. Skinner, I'm going to give you one easy one and then one much more difficult one.
Okay.
The first one is it correct that if it's a group 1, group 2, that they'll be on campus 3 days 1 week, 2 days the next week? So I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, well, it depends. Like, let's say we've got Monday is Monday of President's Day or Martin Luther King Day. It literally goes every other day, and we'll send you out a fancy calendar like this that has the days coded, but it's literally every other day. Okay, so if the group 1 meets on Friday, the weekend comes, group 2 meets on Monday. If Monday's off, then group 2 meets on Tuesday. Okay, can I say one more thing? I'm going to ask a question and answer it myself. Dr. Skinner, can we pick our cohort? Because my friends, I want to be with my friends. Great question. So here's the thing with the cohorts. They're assigned randomly. We will keep sibling groups together, and we'll do our best to keep our carpool groups together. But we're not going to allow students to pick who they want to be with. It's just random. And I know that that's an important thing for 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. It's on their mind. Will so-and-so be in my cohort? And I have to be with so-and-so in my cohort. But it will be random. And I think once we get to that point where we have the two groups, I think students will be pleased just because, I mean, it's a big class, right? And in the senior class, a couple hundred students, you've been together for several years. So I want you to just be patient with that idea that we're not going to allow you to pick a friend to be in your cohort, right? But that doesn't mean that you're left high and dry. We'll help you figure out who's in your cohort. How do you make connections, especially our new students? Making those connections is a significant part of the BSM experience. And that quarter block schedule will actually allow for those connections to happen quicker. You're with the same students more often. And I think that that idea that, you know, I want to be with my friends, absolutely, we're 100% behind you on that. But you're not going to be able to choose your cohort.
Okay, since you so graciously took an extra question, I'll toss this one up to Dr. Ehrmantraut then. There are quite a few questions about contact tracing and under what circumstances someone would have to quarantine. Is it just if there's a positive test, if they're symptomatic, if they're exposed to somebody positive, if they're exposed to somebody symptomatic? What are some of the nuances there?
Yeah, I'm going to pull out the different scenarios and reference them in particular, so I know that I'm speaking with accuracy. The positive students, that's a 14-day quarantine, and the positive students are definitely seeking healthcare attention, and they cannot return to school until they are cleared by their healthcare provider. And those in the quarantine group, the 6 feet within for 15 minutes or more, those folks will be in a 14-day quarantine, which means virtual instruction. Okay. The close contact with COVID-19 symptomatic individual, I'm looking at the plan right now. So that's someone who's symptomatic. We don't know if they have COVID, but you've had close contact, and you know you've had close contact. This is generally usually like families and friends we're seeing this play out with. And in this instance, again, the student should remove themselves from a school setting, and they should quarantine, watch for symptoms, etc. And the recommendation right now is that individual who is symptomatic would go and become tested, and they would indicate whether they're positive or negative, and that would then indicate whether the student can return to campus or not. Those are the scenarios that we're seeing play out most frequently, is that family and friend connection. But the real easy solution is, if you feel as though that you've been exposed to someone who's symptomatic along that line, take a step back, don't come to school, call the school, ask questions.
Then a quick follow-up to that, Dr. Ehrmantraut, in terms of the family communication regarding that, how specific or general is the communication going to be? Is it going to be down to the person? Is it classroom? How does that work?
Dr. Ehrmantraut, you are muted right now.
Thank you. Okay, bring me back to the question, Dr. Pohlen. I'm sorry.
Yeah, in terms of the communication about the tracing and the positive cases and so forth, how does that go with families?
Got it. The communication to the whole school when there's a positive individual that has been on campus, that will go school-wide. We won't be identifying who that specific individual is. Those in the quarantine group will get another communication that directs them to 14-day virtual learning and contacting their healthcare provider.
Dr. Skinner, can you run through the first week of school and kind of go through the rationale of how we're staggering the start of each group and how we're doing that to kind of ramp up school at the beginning of the year?
Sure. So we've got that first day, which has typically been our new student orientation or 9th grade orientation, which is for instance, all of the class of 2024, even if you attended BSM junior high, that would be on the 31st, along with all of the class of 2026. Is that what 7th graders are? Oh, geez. The class of 2026 and new 8th graders, it's 8 until noon. And that is more of an acclimating to the building itself, to how does the classroom look, how does the 6 feet distancing look. There's link crew leaders there that day that help students make some connections. And then, but there's no regular first period, second period, third period, fourth period, but they will run through the building to see what their classes look like and how they travel. Then on that Tuesday, it's just 7th, 8th, and 9th graders going through their classes, period 1, 3, 5, and 7, and lunch. And the idea there is with less people in the building, we can have more adults free to help those students acclimate to how that works. And then we start with 10th through 12th grade on that Thursday, Friday. We've always had that long Labor Day weekend. So that first week is spent helping our students understand how things will work. And again, I know I'm kind of harping on this, but that idea that we help students understand why things are different. Why am I wearing a mask? Why are you on me about 6 feet? Why are there only 10 desks in my classroom? Why am I, having to come back and forth to school and learn from home? And part of that is going to be education, and then the consistency seeing that modeled at school. So to start those first 3 days as a ramp up to how is it going to go when we come back on that Tuesday after Labor Day, and boom, you're right in your first hour working hard and clicking along.
Mrs. Mortl, can you describe a little more about the common areas? Are they quiet with students having headphones? Can the kids verbally participate in class through the live stream? What does a common space look like at BSM for this year?
Sure. We have multiple different common spaces that will all be supervised by adults. And the adults will be there for a couple of reasons. One is to make sure that the students are engaged in their online learning. 2, to provide any technical support or any just support in general. But the students will be streaming into their classroom live. And then, yes, they will be able to have a conversation. This is kind of a bad example, but in Zoom, you can go back and forth. You can raise your hand. Teachers can put students into breakout rooms so they can actually do group discussions with students that are in the classroom, at home virtual, or in their virtual learning spaces here at BSM. With that being said, there's also opportunities for teachers to take their classes outside so that students wouldn't be in those virtual learning spaces. Again, depending on the class size, if the weather, all those sorts of things, but we will have students engaged in the classes, both here on campus and then at home.
Dr. Ehrmantraut, there's some questions here about what BSM spent the government loan on, and what about the tuition model? Does the tuition model change depending on what mode we're in, virtual, hybrid, together? Were there financial implications for fundraising and tuition, things like that? Can you kind of go through that whole?
Yeah, I'll give you an overview of last spring through now and what we anticipate moving forward financially. When COVID hit the United States, our organization was no different than other organizations in terms of our revenue streams. Our revenue stream is derived from 2 sources. One is tuition and one is fundraising dollars, and both immediately were impacted by the economic downturn that has continued, frankly, with many of our families, certainly on the fundraising side and the tuition side. In terms of the loan that we secured, we participated in the PPP loan program, the federal program, and we frankly have used that for payroll and utilities and some of our mitigation pieces in preparation for this year. We know our revenue streams are going to be down again this year. And we also have a more expensive academic model right now. This idea of offsite and onsite, while sounds like there's tons of cost savings, it's actually the model is more expensive. So we have to find ways to make that work for our community throughout the course of this year.
There is a technology question, so I'll take that one. Every class will have a conference camera system. So in every single classroom, there'll be a conference camera, and students will be able to live stream whether they're on campus or at home with audio, visual. Every teacher is going to have a Zoom account. There's screencasting technology that we've implemented so that if the teachers have to create a recording of something that they've done or a lesson plan, they can do that as well. There's a number of different technological things that we've enhanced this summer, including our wireless infrastructure and our bandwidth, and a number of different things that we've done to ramp up the technology for this school year.
Can I add to that? And Steve will be shy about this, so I'm going to just jump in and give him some credit here. So when you think about the technology and the tools, right? The tools are just the tools, but the secret sauce is how the teacher uses those very powerful tools to make the learning experience a positive experience. And BSM, we have what we call a mature laptop program. So the high school started in 2010 with laptops, and 4 years prior to that, the junior high. So it's well established. And Steve has done an excellent job leading us in professional development. So our teachers have been learning how to use these very powerful tools for a number of years. We've invested heavily in professional development, sending teachers to conferences, doing site visits, bringing different professionals onto our campus. And so we have a strong core of teacher leaders who really train each other. In fact, this morning in the atrium, we had a session that was led with how to use these new cameras. We had some teachers in the atrium physically here, others virtually here. And Carrie Kushel, an English teacher at about 11, she led another session on the Zoom, different tricks and features in the Zoom. So I really want to emphasize that the way that we're able to deliver this, what I think is an excellent experience for our students, granted, it's pandemic, right? So we would love to be all back as we were a year ago. But the strength that we have is really the quality of our faculty. And I cannot tell you how proud I am of how hard they're working, the time they're putting into this, the effort. I think that really is a key differentiator when you think about BSM. And I'm giving Steve a lot of credit for that because he's led the charge there.
I think we have time for one more question, and Mrs. Mortl and Dr. Skinner, if you can answer this jointly to some extent. What about events? What about fun? What about masses and homecoming and some of those social things that help everybody emotionally and socially?
Okay, so as long as I'm on a roll giving people credit, I'm going to give Mrs. Mortl credit for last spring. What she did with some of the junior high folks was, I thought, pretty creative, like class-wide cahoots. I think you had a COVID quarantine hair contest or something like that. So she was pretty creative to just develop those fun things. In our academic calendar this year, we've built in class community building days. So there's a few days in the calendar where we might, for example, have only the seniors on campus, and they would be able to do some of that community building, as a class, developing their strength and their leadership as the senior class. And then I know that when you think about homecoming, we're not having a homecoming dance like we have in the past, but we will celebrate homecoming. So the question is, how do we do that, and how do we do that safely? It's going to require some creativity. It's going to require some hard work. But when you think about BSM, and Dr. Ehrmantraut mentioned this in the beginning, we're all about the whole person. Yes, academics is important. Yes, spiritual growth is important. But you guys nailed it. Having fun, developing those relationships, the connections, those moments that you remember in your high school years, those are important. And it's really on us and the students to be creative and innovative to figure out how do we do that. And our student leadership, I think, can really step up for us. I think that they are, students are so creative and innovative, and they don't care. They're just like, yep, let's just try it. Let's try it. So I'm looking forward to that, but it'll be a challenge for sure.
Mrs. Mortl, did you want to add anything, or did you speak to Mass? I forget.
Oh, I can speak to masses, and actually, Dr. Skinner, if you want to jump in and correct me or change the answer at all, please feel free. But masses are going to be done through theology classes this year. So we still will have Mass. It's just going to be a little bit different than we have in the past.
So we're winding down here. We've recorded all of your questions. If we didn't have a chance to answer yours, we will definitely be developing that FAQ over the next couple of days here, and that will be available on our website. I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Ehrmantraut here for some final remarks.
So while Dr. Ehrmantraut's unmuting, I'm going to answer a question. The PowerSchool link in the Roundup email, it does not have a create account tab for new parents. So we learned this earlier today. Power School is working on fixing that. It disappeared. So new parents, when you go in to create your Power School account, you won't see the Create Account tab. It should be there. They have let us know that it should reappear in the morning. And if it doesn't, just give Kathleen a call in the main office. But that's for brand new parents. For our returning parents, you should be able just to log into Power School as usual and do your roundup. So new parents, try again tomorrow. We're on it. We're watching for that, making sure that Create Account tab appears tomorrow.
Thank you, Dr. Skinner. This year is going to look very different than any other year, but we're committed to educating through this pandemic. Our faculty have been working unbelievably hard this summer to figure out how we can do this. But we're excited about the year ahead. We're looking forward to taking on this challenge and delivering on that holistic education. But one thing I do want to bring back to the forefront, our partnership between home and school will be as important, more important this year than any year we've experienced. That strong communication, keeping track of things moving forward will be critical. So this is a good start in terms of webinars, et cetera. What you see in front of you is our website. This will be a live element of our website. We'll have a COVID specific piece where we'll have assets there, communications there. That'll be important. It'll be live and breathing over time. So that'll be a great place to go. But as always, if you have questions, please reach out. We'll get to the right people to address your questions. So I want to thank you all for participating today. We're ready for the school year, and we're looking forward to partnering with you for 2020-21. Take care, everyone. Bye now.